Thank you, everyone, and thank you for the very great introduction. I'm really happy to be here. I'm hopefully the connection will work. So I'm sharing my screen here. Normally, everybody can see it. So yes, after, as it was presented, I'm going to present here you our last report that we have published 2 weeks ago, which is about the European residential battery in Europe. So we can start, and as before starting, I will give you some context in the scope of our study. So the study is available for free on our website. I've put a QR code to it. Hopefully, it will be working. And so our report is called European Market Outlook for Residential Battery Storage. And as the name suggests, we tracked the market for residential battery energy storage system in Europe. So in acronym, the BESS. And this is the second edition of the report, and we started the series last year in 2020. So for a few insights, so we have first looked at the historical growth of residential batteries across Europe, and we also analyzed the key driver. And then we did a deep dive into the 4 or 5 largest markets in Europe. After that, we also looked at what lies ahead of us and what we can expect for the coming years. So if you're familiar with our report, we always do a 5-year forecast under 3 scenarios. So a low scenario, a medium, and a high one. I just got a confirmation that everybody can hear me properly. That's perfect. And so we have those 3 scenarios, and those 3 scenarios include any factor that can impact the market, in which we include a prolonged impact of the COVID-19, the impact of national recovery package, and other factors that can jump on defer the scenarios. So now that the context is set on our report, I think we can jump right in with my first slide, which starts about the annual market development in Europe. So on the graph here, what we see is the annual installation on the continent. And what we observed is that the strong growth that we have identified in the previous edition, it continued in 2020. So in 2020, we have observed a 44% increase between 2019 and 2020 of annual installed capacity. And with this growth, this means actually that the European residential battery market reached the gigawatt-hour scale for the fourth time, with a total of 1,072 megawatt-hour installed. So this is equivalent to about 140,000 battery systems installed in 2020, which compared to the 99,000 installed in 2019. So with that result and those results, 2020 marked actually 2 important milestones for the first time. One is that it is the first time that over 1,100 systems were added in 1 year on the continent. And for the first time, also, the annual gigawatt-hour scale was reached. So those are 2 major milestones for the continent, more than 100,000 residential batteries and the gigawatt-hour scale. If you look back on the market just 5 years ago, you can see on the graph that we have a completely different picture. So in 2015, we only had 119 megawatt-hour installed, which represent more or less 18,000 home battery residential. So it is really striking to see that the market has grown 8 times its size since then. And to move on the next slide, where we have the flip coin of the annual market, actually, which is the cumulative battery, the cumulative residential battery, so the total fleet of the batteries. And so we saw that there is a strong increase in the annual markets, but what we see here is that the growth in cumulative installed storage capacity is even more pronounced. What we observed that the total fleet jumped from less than 2 gigawatt-hour in 2019 to over 3 gigawatt-hour in 2020. So this represents a 54% year-on-year increase. So in short, also, compared to just 5 years ago, the total residential storage capacity has grown 14 times its size. And to have a more insight behind all those installations, we can have a look on the next slide, which represents the top 5 markets in Europe. So we see that in Europe, we have seen that although more and more national markets are looking at solar storage as a solution, the deployment of the technology is still driven by a handful of leading countries. So the graph you have here represents the annual installation capacity per year, comparing 2019 to 2020. So the graph pretty much speaks for itself, and we see that Germany remains the undisputed leading European country in installation for residential battery, as it is for residential solar PV. I will not cover too much the German market, as we have already another presentation by the German Association right after, and which then might overlap on the topic. I will just mention here that, as you can see from the chart, the central role of Germany can really not be underestimated. It holds around a 70% market share of the whole market, but more than that, the predominance of Germany is actually growing a little bit. So between 2019 and 2020, Germany actually gained a 2% market share. And to give some perspective on what that represents, the annual installed capacity in Germany in 2020 is higher than the total European installed capacity in 2019, so just 1 year before. Now, to focus a little bit on the other country, in a different order of magnitude, there were some other markets that gained our attention. So Italy kept the second position as last year, and this is mainly thanks to a strong public support scheme. So in 2020, it added 94 megawatts, corresponding to more or less a 46% growth. And the Italian residential battery market is mostly driven by a subsidy scheme. So on the one hand, there is a tax credit for small-scale solar PV and residential battery. And on the second hand, we have a new incentive, which is called the Super Bonus 110, which was introduced as part of the COVID-19 National Recovery Program. So this super bonus allows homeowners to deduct up to 110% of the expense related to home energy efficiency work, which include solar PV and residential storage. Then moving on the third place, on the graph we have the United Kingdom, which is also experiencing notable growth, and this without the help of any subsidies. So the country installed 81 megawatt hour in 2020, which results in a 25% increase year on year compared to 2019. And what is important to know in the UK is that the market remains still limited because of the small volume of residential capacity installed, which is in the solar PV a segment that still suffer from the reduction of feed-in tariff rates in the UK solar rooftop program, which actually fully closed in 2019. Then to finish, the two last countries we looked at, it's Austria and Switzerland that closed the top five. These both markets are experiencing a regular and stable growth, mostly thanks to their stable and supportive policy framework for solar and storage. So in terms of market size, Austria added 41 megawatt hour in 2020, and Switzerland added 26 megawatt hour in 2020. So that's it for the current state of the markets, and maybe now we can have a look at what lies ahead of us and what we forecast for the market. So here, even with the COVID-19 pandemic, we expect that the European residential battery market will maintain its growing path. This is mainly because many European countries are seeing the first result of the recovery package and other measures that put in place to put back the economy. So we also noticed that following the various lockdowns that we had in Europe, some European households have increased their saving and decided now to invest in a storage and solar system. So just after seeing in 2020 that the market surpassed the gigawatt hour level for the first time, our medium scenario, which is the orange line you can see on the graph, we expect for 2021 1.77 gigawatt hour to be installed, which is a 28% increase from 2020 level, which is a number in line with what was discussed just a little bit earlier about the 30% increase by the Bloomberg New Energy Finance. So we also have revised significantly upward our growth expectation for the market. This is primarily due to a very strong improved market conditions in Germany and Italy. So here our medium scenario, we expect an annual two-digit growth every year between 2021 and 2025. And in 2025, so the last year we were forecasting, we expect 2.51 gigawatt hour of annual installed residential storage across Europe. And to touch a word on our low and high border, Our low scenario, so which is the blue column, we anticipate a worsened trade condition, some COVID-19 prolonged restriction, and some other negative market impacts. And according to this low scenario, we foresee a stagnating market in 2021 with 1.09 gigawatt hour installed. So by contrast, the high scenario, so the yellow bar you see on the graph, in this scenario, we anticipate further advancement in the EU member state ambitions toward renewable energy and decarbonization goals in general. Under this scenario, we already expect 1.8 gigawatt hour of installed capacity in 2021. And finally, by 2025, the European market storage will be as small as 1.7 gigawatt hour or as large as 3.5 gigawatt hour to a low and a high scenario. So that's for the forecast for the annual market. I will move very quickly on the cumulative market because I don't want my presentation to last too long because we have time. On the cumulative, the outlook is also a very high growth rate for the coming year. They are consistently above 20% for all year, and this is mostly just the flip coin of the annual development that we're expecting for the coming years. So I will now having one last slide before my conclusion, which is about the relative share of the market in Europe. So here, interestingly, we see that the top 4 countries will more or less retain the relative share, while the total installed capacity in absolute term will keep growing. So we see that Germany will grow from 70 to 71%, while the other 3, so UK, Italy, and Austria, will lose 1 percentage point each. And as a result of that, the contribution from the rest of European countries will increase, showing a beginning of a diversification trend, and that could be more pronounced in the long term. So even if the market is not extremely mature at the moment in those countries, some of European countries are reaching every year the gigawatt scale in terms of solar PV development. I'm thinking about Poland, Spain, the Netherlands. So we're really expecting to see further development in those countries. And then my last slide for conclusion, which I will go pretty fast. So first of all, the growth path of home storage batteries across Europe continue in 2020, and we expect a 44% increase. Secondly, the increase in cumulative installed capacity is even more pronounced than the annual growth. Thirdly, in 2021, we are expecting strong growth too, with 1.37 gigawatt hour of new installation. And fourthly, we see that the development of the technology is still largely driven by a handful of leading countries, primarily Germany, and it will continue at least for the coming years. So with that will be the end of my presentation. I hope I did not extend too much on the time, and thank you very much for the attention.